another episode of People, Place, and Purpose, the show where we hear stories from business owners, creators, and entrepreneurs about how they got started, what they love most, what challenges them, where they've had to pivot, learn, change, how relationships and networking have helped along the way, and ultimately, how they turn their passion into a successful venture and are living a life they love. I'm your host, Kate Lusko. I love to travel, eat delicious food, and meet and get to know cool people, and I'm so glad you're here today. Let's jump in. John Mortimer is the owner and founder of Millennium Running. John was a runner in high school and college, eventually had a professional running career with Reebok and Adidas, went on to coach at the college level, and 11 years ago, out of necessity and a passion for the sport, started a running company. Millennium Running hosts signature road races and triathlons, has a retail store, a running club, and a dedication to giving back to the community. The spirit of building a strong and dedicated team and truly being passionate about what you do every day in attempts to lead you towards success is evident throughout my conversation with John. With that, let's get to today's episode. Well, happy Monday, John. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh gosh, it's a pleasure, Kate. Thank you. It's an honor, actually. So looking forward to talking with you today.
Well, I have to show you. Can you see my shirt? So from my first official 5K from September 2014. So ran with you guys a bunch of times since then, but had to pull out the shirt for the occasion this morning.
I see the halfway to St. Patrick's Day 5K.
Yes.
So yeah, a reason to celebrate. You're halfway to St. Patrick's Day. So
That's
nice
right.
have a Guinness, right? And go for a run.
Well, and you just had a race on Saturday. Have you recovered from the big shindig?
We did. We had one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and back to the 9 to 5 office grind, making sure our runners and our customers are happy, and feeling proud about their accomplishment from running over the weekend for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. So to start with, I'd love you to tell us about your background. So where you're from originally, what you did before doing what you do now.
Sure. Well, gosh, I'll try to be brief, right? Try to give you the quick version of it. I'm a New Hampshire native. Grew up here. Went to primary school all the way through high school in New Hampshire, and found a passion for running as a high school athlete, a junior high athlete, a high school athlete, as ultimately was a basketball player to start, and then transitioned over to cross country and indoor track and outdoor track. And I had, as my high school coach said, it's not that hard, just take lefts around the track. And I found that I was better than most people at it. And the success that I had growing up here in high school sports led to, state championships and high school national championships. And ultimately, I accepted a full scholarship to the University of Michigan, where I was an All-American there many times over, and Big Ten champion, and had a great college career as a runner. Got a great education from a fantastic institution, and then ultimately led to running professionally for Adidas and Reebok, making 2 U.S. national teams, representing the United States in track and field. Was one of the biggest honors of my entire life. So
yeah,
I've been a lifelong runner, and it started at a young age here in Londonderry, New Hampshire, all the way through collegiately and professionally. And that transitioned as a post-collegiate runner running professionally. I started college coaching as well. As I lived in Boston, I was a volunteer college coach at Harvard, ultimately became the assistant coach for men's cross country and track and field at Boston College, and then the assistant track and field and cross country coach at University of Kentucky. And that was a long journey of running and coaching, and again, just being passionate about the sport that so enriched my life with experiences and friendships. And then ultimately, when my wife Jennifer and I had our first child, we needed to move back to some roots, and that brought us back to New Hampshire. When my infant son Jack, we moved back to New Hampshire. She was a teacher at the time, and I had this idea of creating a running company, and it's called Millennium Running, and that's what we do now. We've done it now for 11 years. And it's been a great story. So running's always been a part of my life, from an athlete to a coach to now a business owner, getting hundreds of thousands of people to run every year.
Congratulations. That's amazing. A little sidebar, I'm curious, having run for such a long time, right? Some might claim that running is sort of hard on your body. How do you, how have you managed to run for such a long time and professionally? And, how have you balanced that to make sure you're also taking care of your body?
Well, gosh, good question. I mean, I think that's a uh, maybe a misconstrued idea that running's bad for your body. It's probably the best thing for you, right? Staying healthy, keeping skeletal strength, muscular strength up. Um, a healthy lifestyle with exercise every day is the best thing for you. And I'm inspired when I see athletes like the gentleman that ran the Citizen Shamrock Shuffle yesterday, who's like 86, so he's still doing it. So people like that inspire me. I'm 40. I'm 46, so he's got me by 40 years, and he's still doing it. So um, I think it's about getting out and exercising, both for physical health and mental health, which is probably in some ways just as important, if not more important, as part of the journey of good health.
Well, in one of my side hustles, I teach yoga, and I always try and encourage people. Yoga is such a great complement to so many other athletic pursuits. So I think, trying to find some balance too with, how you're using your body can be beneficial.
Absolutely, and that's yoga is a great connection to mind and body, and that's we encourage many of the athletes that my wife coaches or is part of our club to get involved in yoga and stretch. Talk about being hard on your body. Running can be hard on your body if you don't do those other things, and
Hmm.
sometimes those other things are stretching. Too often people run and they they're done, they're happy. I once was on a panel, and an athlete that was very successful, actually American record holder at the time, and she was getting close to 40. She said as she got older, she stretched more than she ran. So
Ah,
um,
interesting.
it's running is about half the work. The other part is that the little things make the biggest differences in success.
Okay, so 11 years ago, you came back to New Hampshire, decided, hey, I think I'm going to start a running company. What did that look like when you first started
Oh
out?
gosh. Well, it's a story that a lot of people don't necessarily know the back end side of sort of how that happened. But I had mentioned our son was born when we lived in Kentucky, and I was the track coach there. Um, and he was a sick little kid. He had all sorts of child illnesses, ear infections every week it seemed like, and hand, foot, and mouth. Just about everything a kid could get, including the swine flu back then.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was getting tubes put in his ears at the UK hospital, and I was coaching my team out in Seattle, Washington, and it was at that moment that I didn't want to be coaching the athletes at that point. I wanted to be with my wife and there. I mean, it's not a huge surgery, it's not life changing, it's pretty routine, but when your first child goes into the hospital and has any procedure done, it's a little unnerving. So we had a little bit of a come to Jesus moment as a family to say, what are we really doing? And that was the impetus for us to explore moving back home. Um, and I actually looked for, quite possibly getting a coaching job in a smaller school that
Hmm.
might have less travel. Of course, at Kentucky, it's one of the, SEC schools. If you know college athletics, our budget was almost unlimited. We traveled every weekend and recruiting all the time. So it was a high travel job, and moving back to New England was um, stepping back to our roots a little bit. And my wife got a teaching job in up in the Upper Valley, and even before I was interviewing for college coaching jobs up at Dartmouth and smaller schools in New England. And ultimately, we decided we were going to take the leap and move back. And I thought I was I was a finalist for the Dartmouth college coaching job, and I thought I had it. I was a New Hampshire native coming back home. I knew the athletic director. I thought I was a shoe in for the job, and we had committed to move, and we were going to do this, and I was going to coach, and she was going to teach. And the day the movers were coming, I got the call from the AD, thinking like,
Oh.
"Yep, I'm ready to accept it." And he said we went with another candidate, and my heart sunk.
Mm.
Um, and I said, "Oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do now?" And so my wife, as a teacher, breadwinner. I had, you know, zero job. And it was at that moment that we turned what was a pet project of something called the Millennium Mile, which is a 1 mile road race that I had created 10 years prior to that. As I was when I was a college senior, I created a 1 mile run that happens in my hometown in Londonderry called the Millennium Mile. And I did it for 10 years. And it was that light bulb moment that I said, you know what, we could change this Millennium Mile into a business. And that's where Millennium Running was born, almost out of necessity because I didn't have a job anymore. um,
Right.
and so give you a little bit of context to the Millennium Mile. That was a very fun event that I created as a senior in college. My best friend went to Wisconsin. As I mentioned, I went to Michigan. His older brother was at Georgetown, and Y2K was a thing, if you recall that from
Yes.
some people that are old enough to remember that. Some of our employees don't know that it existed in such a way, but you know, we wanted to have a big New Year's Eve party with all our running buddies, and ultimately we said, wouldn't it be really funny if we went to a road race with all these runners that are coming back from our respective colleges and professional runners? We had 72 NCAA All-Americans coming to this party for New Year's Eve, and there were no road races to be found back in 1999 on New Year's Eve. There was one on New Year's Day, but Y2K, who knows what was going to happen? So,
Right. The
um,
world could have been
so
over.
that was the thought. And, you know, we were going to
Right.
go to Boston and, you know, but then the electricity could go out and you'd be stuck. So we decided to have this great party at my best friend's house growing up. And ultimately that led to us saying, wouldn't it be funny if we did our own road race? So we created that year the Millennium Mile, and our very fast friends ran very fast, and it was picked up by local television, newspapers, and so that was the birth of Millennium Mile. Again, 10 years as a pet project, that ultimately became Millennium Running when I didn't get the Dartmouth coaching job. And it's been now 11 years of running a small business that is a running business.
And so when you know, you moved back here and you first launched this, what did the landscape look like in New Hampshire? What did the running landscape look like?
Oh, good question. I mean, it's part of New Hampshire's always had a very strong running community. There's a lot of communities like that around. You know, people have always enjoyed it. They've had some great events. You know, great annual events like the, you know, the turkey trots that are out there, or things like the Cigna Elliott Corporate Challenge that had 5,000 people at it. Um, great community fundraisers that are typically done by an organization looking to raise money for their mission or their nonprofit. Um, but it was sort of disjunctured, and I had a inclination that if we could professionalize event management and bring all those pieces together, we could bring the running community together. We could produce first class events like the ones I was fortunate enough to participate in as an athlete, all around the world, and then ultimately support our local community through the proceeds and the charitable giving from those events. So, um, as I said to your question, it was a little disjunctured. There's an event here, an event there, a couple of great events, but no one was really bringing it together with um, event operations and timing and online registration, kind of putting all those pieces together to be a vertically integrated business. And so that was the idea. If I could bring all those pieces together, and that's so far worked pretty well.
Well, and so without giving away any trade secrets, what makes, you just mentioned first class running event? Like what makes for a first class running event?
Oh gosh, you know, I think that's a really good question, and not, you know, we talk about that, but I don't know that a lot of people have really kind of gone under the covers to say what makes it a first class running event. I guess as a goal, right? We want to have, you know, people think of the Boston Marathon. That's a first class running event. It's the best marathon in the entire world. It's the granddaddy of them all. It's the most prestigious marathon. Um, with a goal of, if running the halfway to St. Patrick's Day 5K was your first race, we want that to feel for you like that is your Boston Marathon. So you look at what the best people do in the world and you say, what are some pieces that we could emulate? Or how could we deliver a product that creates that level of excitement, show, so to speak, um, a deliverable to the consumer, to the runner, that feels like when they cross the finish line, they won their own journey. And I guess with that, you know, theory, every little piece of the first class running event fits into that, whether that's from a digital side of it, of online registration and website presence, to marketing, to the medal that goes around your neck, to the operations on the course, the photos at the finish line, the video of you finishing, all those things all play a part. The music at the event, the announcer, all those things are part of the show. So when I say first class, you know, we want to always invest in the product, to give the runner that's finishing that race, starting and finishing the race, as well as the spectators and sponsors and nonprofit partners, the best experience possible. So I don't think there's just one thing, it's all of those things.
Hmm.
And then each time we produce an event, we're trying to get better than the last time.
Well, and certainly attention to detail, right? Because it is all those little, eh, with any event, even outside of the running world, there's so many things you just don't want people to notice, but you have to pay attention to them in order for other people not to notice them, right? Like, so making sure that
Absolutely.
things are smooth.
Absolutely. And it could, we can get into the weeds on so many of these operational things that make a difference on it. But, you know, it sounds kind of funny, but a long portage online can ruin your experience at a road race. So just making sure you have the right logistics around getting people to the starting line is hugely important. And sometimes it goes down to portage ons or where they're placed, how many lines there are. It's all those things matter.
Yeah.
And we work hard each time to improve every single aspect of our events. Um, but I guess I would speak to that, is that when you said first class events, that's the philosophy and that's the theory that we want to go with every time. We have a team that works really hard. And when I started this 11 years ago, it was me, myself, and I. And working out of my basement of the house we rented up in the Upper Valley, and it was a little unnerving. So I would often say we, to sound bigger than I, as a company, as a business. It was we. It was really, it was me, um, working really hard at it for the first year, and then ultimately being able to bring on, as a small business, sole proprietor business, to bring on, key people to our team that were invested in the product, that cared about the product as much, as sometimes more than as much, or if not more than I do. Um, so, at this point, producing these first class events is more a product of the great people that we have as part of Millennium Running, whether that be the graphics design, the website, the marketing, the operational side of it, the timing. Um, it all matters. And this team that we have of employees at Millennium Running, I hate to use the word employees, they're all part of the team. Um, and they put their heart and soul into it, and they make for a better product every time.
So, can you take us through sort of back when you were a one-man show to how things evolved with the number of events and how you picked up races
Sure.
or created races, like what that's looked like?
Oh my gosh, yes, that was we had these I had these creative ideas. So I'm an entrepreneurial spirit, creative thinker. I was an architecture major in college. That's what I went to school for. So and I found in architecture school, I was shocked as I got into my curriculum how little they taught you about architecture. Believe it or not, they taught you more about creative thinking,
Hmm.
problem solving, um, way to look at things differently and find a creative solution for it. And then ultimately it got pretty technical at the end, but there was a lot of philosophy and creative thinking and creativity through the art side of architecture. And I think that was a good springboard for me to think this way around owning a business. I didn't go to school for I don't have my MBA or I didn't go to business school. So things like profit and loss sheets and balance sheets and all this stuff that business owners would look at are I had to learn a lot of that stuff on the
Hmm.
fly, so to speak. And going back in time, the first after 6 months of starting my business and researching how to start a business and how to create one with the state of New Hampshire, I had a shoebox full of receipts that I had kept with a Visa card that I had a company name on. And I was like, what do I do with all these things? So, going from me, myself, and I to hiring my next door neighbor at the time who was on, maternity leave, and didn't want to go back full time, and she was my accounts payable person,
Mm-hmm.
for a couple hours a week to help me, figure out QuickBooks and deal with my receipts as I was trying to, facilitate producing this business. And it was pretty, walking on a tightrope on some of that stuff. But we were very fortunate that my wife Jennifer had a great job as a school teacher with great insurance as a family.
Mm-hmm.
So that safety net there for us to modestly provide for our family and have those was like an invaluable asset for us as she was the breadwinner for me to try to follow a dream and make it work. And but as each event that I say we produced at that time, it was I in 2011. Again, we had the Millennium Mile that had pre-existed. I added 5 new events to that throughout the whole year. One of them was the event we just did for the 11th time, the Shamrock Shuffle. We added a Thanksgiving Day turkey trot at the New Hampshire Fisher Cat Stadium. We added a nice 10-mile race around Lake Massabesic, and we did the Santa Claus Shuffle in Manchester as well. And we did another event called the Manchester Mile that no longer exists anymore. But we produced 5 new events, and I had great people that would come out and volunteer to help with the race. We would hire them for the day to help me move cones or set up tents. And then soon thereafter, we developed a team. We had a gentleman, a young kid actually, Mike Peavity, came on full time after he graduated from UNH, and then we started to add team members to this on the graphic side of it, on the operational side of it, on the timing side of this. So each time we were able to produce an event that was successful, that generated funds for charity, that made our business better, we were able to invest in the people. And so each time we added infrastructure, people, and we were able to grow into from a me to a we within about 2 years. We had a handful of team members that made me look like I knew what I was doing. So
That's the way to do it. Surround yourself with the best people.
That's what they say. And each person that came on had a skill set that I didn't have. And I rely on them, Barry on our marketing side, Sarah on our graphics design and creative side. I mean, the stuff they put out there is unbelievable. And now with even more team members on operational, different operational tasks and timing and managing the back end logistics, they blow my mind with their skill sets and their abilities and their passion and their creative thinking. And they make me look like I know what I'm doing, and credit to them, because that we is way better than a me could ever be.
For sure. So about how many people do you have, and about how many races are you putting on now?
Oh yeah. So I mean, now we're over or into our 11th year of doing it. We own now 30 events that we own and operate. We have a timing team. We have a timing business unit where we time about 50 to 60 more races a year.
Mm-hmm.
Third-party events that organizations would hire us to perform our services. So, we're about 100 events that we're involved in annually. We have 9 full-time employees on the event side, and we have about 20 part-time employees. So,
that's incredible.
yeah.
I mean, it must be so gratifying to have taken this from, hey, I'd love to do this, maybe this will become a thing, to, a legitimate business.
Yeah, it's a non-traditional business, and as your podcast, you interview some very interesting people with interesting stories. This is an interesting one because it's a non-traditional business. I think putting on running events, putting on road races. It's funny. Some people say, "Do you do this full time?" Like, I would definitely do it full time. It's not a job you grow up thinking, "Hey, I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to do this great job." Like, it's a nuanced business that people don't quite understand or realize what happens in the back end. Sometimes you just show up to the halfway to St. Patrick's Day 5K and go and run. You don't realize the back end side of that goes into it to make it happen. And there's a huge industry around events, whether that be concerts or fairs or festivals, or in our case, athletic events like running events and triathlons, where um, there's a medal company that their only job is to make finisher medals. There's t-shirt companies like the one you're wearing that their only job is to supply t-shirts for hundreds of thousands of events a year. So there's a huge industry behind it, and we're lucky to be part of such an amazing um, community that supports it and makes people happy and healthy.
So, given how much you've grown for yourself and for your team, how do you figure out work-life balance?
That's the hardest thing, and I think the pandemic is probably um, you know brought that to light more than anything else, is that life work balance. And I think everybody was overworked and scared as they went through that, their own story of the pandemic. And certainly as a small business, we had to adapt and had our changes. And I think doing things like working remotely is now a huge benefit that didn't really exist before that. It's kind of changed our philosophy around how to get the job done. Um, but as a small business, we want for our employees the same thing that my wife and I, who we both obviously work for the company now, we have. If we have to go to our kid is in a school play, I have no doubt that we're going to take off the afternoon work and do that. And I want that for everyone that works as our, at here. Family life comes first. Um, but now we do have so many events. It becomes a challenge to do that. But you have to we have to listen to what's important, and family is always the most important thing. Um, you know, that being said, I find it amazing, and I'm always inspired by our team because they seem to want to spend time together, after an event, hanging out, grabbing a beer, grabbing lunch, and they spend the extra time together. So, we do have, and we call it, team members, but it's really the Millennium family. So I think having a work-life balance helps when you have a family at home and you have a family at work, and they truly enjoy working together, and they respect each other and they enjoy being around each other.
Yeah, that's so great. So, a couple weeks ago, you celebrated the 6-year anniversary of another piece of your business that's evolved. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it's a retail store, brick and mortar retail store. And again, we started, in 2011 as producing running events, and I mentioned it was out of the basement of the house we rented in the Upper Valley. Um, as that business started to grow and become, going from 5 events to 6 events to 8 events, I actually was looking at a couple lending partners, local banks that would say, "Hey, can we get a business loan? We want to grow faster. I need to buy some more equipment." And they looked at the lending community, kind of looks at a business like that. It's like a cash only business. It's a cash on hand business. It's not really like, what's your collateral for a road race?
Hmm.
The cones, the inflatable arch. It's like pennies on the dollar, so to speak. So we definitely were a non-traditional business, and after a couple of years of doing it, they're like, well, it's not worth very much, so we can't lend on that much to kind of put gasoline on the fire. And so one of the things that they talked about is having a brick and mortar location. And so I had thought about wanting to have that, and then um, it occurred to us that having a brick and mortar store that services the running community, with footwear, apparel, accessories, knowledge, expertise, in the marketplace that we now have it in Bedford, is something that there was a hole in the market. and
Hmm.
and so we opened in 2016, or 2015, I guess it would be 2016, a Millennium retail store, in Bedford, New Hampshire. And again, your traditional brick and mortar, shoes on the wall, come in and try them on. And we have amazing people on that end of the business that that business plan then allowed us to communicate with our lending partners and banks to say, this is a traditional brick and mortar store that we can lend on. And the business plan worked. And ultimately, it now houses not only our retail store, our warehouse, and our offices. So we have a building here in Bedford, the Millennium Building, that allows us to have that vertically integrated company, again, from events and online registration to all the way up to, shopping for your shoes and trying them on. So we have a great team here on the retail side of it that work every day. So we're open 7 days a week. Um,
Nice.
Not just like our storefront isn't just race day. Our storefront is every day. So it's been fun to go through that journey and to be a part of our local community, which is great. You know, family members coming in and club members coming in, customers coming in, people from my son's little league team coming in. We're definitely part of the community to, your local family footwear store. And that's been super rewarding for everybody.
Well, and so certainly it seems like you're really invested in New Hampshire, but you also have a couple of races in Florida and are looking to expand around New England. What does that plan for the future look like?
Yeah, well, and maybe I'm a serial entrepreneur in some of this side of it, right? I enjoy, well, I'm just more of an athlete. I enjoy competing. I enjoy working for something. I can have an analogy with, to be better at running, to run a faster mile or run a faster 5K, you have to put the work in. You have to do the training. You have to do the hill workouts. You have to eat right. You have to stretch. There are so many facets of being better at the sport, to working on the sport to get better, to get the right outcome. And and it comes down to competitiveness. I'm a hyper competitive person. I'm at my core, I want to win, right? And sometimes as a business owner, you see winning as growing, as being better than you were last time. And when you get into small business ownership or oh, businesses in general, it's, did more people run? Did we have more events? Did we do more? And that's part of the DNA of my entrepreneurial spirit, is to grow. um, and which is balanced against the question you asked before, is how do you manage growth against a work-life balance? And that's
Right.
tricky, right? um, but to create better events, bigger events, to give away more to charity, to have more impact to our community. Um, and and so when I look at our mission statement that I created when I first started this, and I always go back to that mission statement, and it's the mission statement is really predicated on three things, right? It's producing first class events. So we've touched on that. You have to
Hmm.
produce first class events. Um, and then the second part is we want to advocate fitness and wellness to as many people as possible. We want to inspire the masses, and that is twofold. It's getting as many people to run in an event as possible, to share that experience, and or having more events, having a larger net to go after. And then the last part is the charitable aspect of what it means to give back to our community. So if you do the first two things right, the third one happens in a big way. And we can chat about our charitable missions in a little bit, but I think the getting fitness and wellness to the masses is part of that, expanding our footprint a little bit to places that aren't necessarily hyper local to southern New Hampshire, which is where we started. It's looking at the seacoast region. It's looking at the North Shore region. It's even looking at a out of market area. I'm gonna say out of market Florida in the wintertime, where there's not a lot of running events in the middle of winter. It's a flop of a season. The Florida summer, there's not a lot of running events because
Hmm.
it's too hot. So the Florida winter becomes, a great opportunity for us. So we have an event in Clearwater, Florida, in January, which is a welcomed runcation for a lot of New Englanders to get out of the cold
For
at
sure.
the end of January. So, um, but that entrepreneurial spirit and is part of that growth, I think.
Well, and I do want to talk about the charitable piece. You hit an amazing milestone in 2021.
Yeah, believe it or not, through COVID, right? It was something to celebrate, and it's a celebration um, of charity and giving. As you said, um, how do you celebrate, or how do you have my train of thought here? How do you manage the growth of something with a life work balance? How do you put all these pieces together? And I think part of it is going back to that third part of our mission statement, is charity. And as I said, as a competitive person, I look at that number of how much we're giving away to charity and how do we make that more? We get more people to run, we get bigger events, but how do we make that more? And to go over $1 million in charitable giving last year was a huge milestone for us. Um, and it's something that I'm competitive with to say, how do we do it better? How do we get to 2 million soon? So how do we get to 2 million sooner than we got to 1 million?
Hmm.
So, um, but our charitable partners, I mean, we have so many that we've been able to support through the running events, whether it's the New Hampshire Food Bank was our official charity of the Citizens Shamrock Half Marathon and Shuffle this past weekend. But we've had, Veterans Count, again, New Hampshire Food Bank, the Mental Health Center, so many great charities that have benefited from our events. Um, that truly makes it worthwhile.
And how do you select? Did you have to create a process at some point along the way to select the nonprofits that you give back to?
Um, yeah, sometimes I think everything is. It's funny. Well, I'll say about an event, right? Um, every event is different. Every event has its own personality. Every event has its own theme. Every event has its own logistics. So it's not like a plug and play and you can just put, a different charity or different sponsor, different venue, and it all looks the same, just a different sticker on it. Everything has its own personality, and we try to be true to that. So if we have an event that's in Bedford, New Hampshire, where we're located, we try to have the nonprofit partners and the charity groups be hyper local to this community. So that's one thing. We kind of search that out. If it's at the Bedford High School, if our event happens at Bedford High School, which one of them does or two of them does, we wrap in the local Bedford Boosters Clubs to be
Mm.
charitable partners on that, right? So we want the community to engage. We make donations to the cheerleaders to be at the finish line. We make donations to the lacrosse team to man registration. We make donations to the band to play along the course. We try to invest in the community to have them be a part of the event. So that's an example of being hyper local with where the funds are. That's part of it. Other times it's on brand. The CMC Manchester City Marathon is Manchester's only marathon. It's one of the few in the entire state. It's one of the biggest races in the state. Huge exposure, starts on TV. The whole community of downtown Manchester, New Hampshire gets around the event. It's on Veterans Weekend. And so we wrap in Veterans Count as the official partner and official charity. And, we've raised, $20,000, $30,000 a year for them, over $100,000 so far we've raised for Veterans Count with that event. And it's the right charity to pick based on the time of year the event is and the relevance of it. And those are two examples of how to pick the right charity to be in line with an event. And we keep on doing that every time. So it's been good.
Well, and it's such a great thing for the runners to be able to sort of do good for others and for themselves, right? Like it's kind of a neat parallel.
It is, and it's interesting about that, and we probably don't talk about our charitable aspects of our company as much as we should. We should do that more. I think we should celebrate that more, and and maybe that's a little bit of a failure on my part as a business owner not to put that up all the time. But I came from running as this is a sport. If you think about you're a Patriots fan or a Red Sox fan, you don't buy your ticket to go see the Pats and say, well, where's the money go? How much do the Patriots donate this weekend, right? That's like, did they win or did they lose? You want to see a show. And I come from, as a professional athlete, I come from athletics as athletics and a sport, not, where does my entry fee go? Your entry fee goes to pay the players for the Red Sox. You want to see them win. Or the $11 beer or maybe $16 beer you buy at Fenway Park. You don't say, well, where's that go? It goes to the concession company. Maybe highway robbery, but at the end of the day, we don't celebrate the charity side of it enough. And I think we should do that a little bit more. And it's probably because I approach it more from we're producing these amazing events and having these great runners. And but at the same time, because we produce these first class events with these amazing medals and this great shirt you have on and great apparel, oftentimes what gets someone to run an event that we have to run one of our road races is the swag. is the, this the stuff we all get, right? Swag. Um, it's the medal at the finish line. If it's a cool medal, if it's cool apparel, that gets them to run. And then on the back end, they realize, oh, this event benefits, New Hampshire Food Bank. Oh, they just raised, 20 grand for New Hampshire. That's good. Like, but they didn't sign up initially because it's the New Hampshire Food Bank. They signed up because they get beer, they get a shirt, and they get an awesome medal, right? That's why. Uh, um, but once they get into the event and they realize the fundraising, the charitable side of it, it is a win-win-win. It's a win for the consumer that they got to the finish line, and it's a win for us because we produced a great event, and it's a win for the nonprofit partner because valuable funds were raised for them. So, those are the win-win-wins across that. But be remiss not to also put a fourth win in there. And this is something that for running events specifically, it is a hard thing to balance within a municipality, right? So this past weekend we had the Shamrock Shuffle, Shamrock Half Marathon. There's road closures. You're
Mhm.
running 13 miles through a city, or in the case of the Manchester City Marathon, you're running 26 miles through a city. That impacts a lot of areas, a lot of roads. Our team obviously works really hard with the police department and DOT and road closures and facilitating that with detours and notifications. Um, but the fourth win on that is that you have thousands of people coming to a municipal downtown, staying in hotels, um, eating in restaurants, going out afterwards, buying Dunkin' Donuts around the corner, getting gas on their way home at the Shell station at the end of the hot exit. There's an economic impact that
For
is
sure.
to the greater good of our community, and it's millions of dollars a year of economic impact with these events. Um, and that's the fourth win is economic impact and positive PR, because you look at the city of Manchester is, obviously we have a great relationship with the leadership there, and Mayor Craig, before that Mayor Gatsis, and now obviously the police department, fire department, all our municipal partners. We would much rather have a story about the Citizens Shamrock Shuffle on TV. And this is a great place to visit. It's a great place to bring your kids out to the parade afterwards. It's a great place to go out to eat, go to some of these great, amazing restaurants right on Elm Street, like Piccola's, right? It's a lot better message than a shooting or an overdose, which are, both of
Mm.
them far too common. Um, but we need to have more positive narratives about the great stuff in our community. And that's ultimately one of the wins that we get out of this is what are we doing for our community at large with great civic events like some of the events we produce.
So it's really clear that you're passionate about this, right? I mean, both from you talking about where this came from, but also just listening to you talk. And I know you've been known to dress up and get into character at different races. Like, where do you get your energy for all of this?
Um, I don't know. That's funny. I guess that's more of I've evolved a little bit into that in terms of being able to enjoy our events a little bit more. And I have a great shamrock suit or a Christmas tree suit that I'll wear at some of our themed events. Um, and that's really, a credit to our team
Hmm.
that work really hard, that allow me not to have to be up on a ladder or move cones at the same time, because our team is doing some of the logistical things behind the scenes that make me be able to be up on stage with the mayor and dress in my shamrock suit and wish everybody good luck and pose for pictures with people. So I guess it's part of the show as well. But I think I am passionate. You mentioned that. I am passionate about the sport. I've been passionate about the sport since I was, a junior high runner. I love it. I love seeing people succeed. Um, so if every time out there I can contribute to a high five and make someone's day um, by getting to that finish line, that's the goal. And sometimes I'm better served being in charge of parking than wearing a suit, because there are times where logistically, things are different in every event, and maybe we have an event that sells out at 2,000 people, and we have like parking for 2,000 people, and if people are parked incorrectly or take too long, you don't get to the start line in time. And an event like that, I might be out there in my reflective vest waving people in to get them into the right, and getting our charity groups to understand where things are going, because that's a hypercritical thing at that event. So whether it's wearing a funny suit, or dressing up and wearing the kilt, or it's, digging in and moving cones, I try to put myself in the position to make our event the most successful.
Well, and such is the life of a business owner, right? Jumping in
Right.
as needed, wearing all the hats.
Wear many hats on that stuff, but I've seen all these memes and stuff, right? Rolling up your sleeves as an owner of the business, and working just as hard as anybody else is part of it. As I said, I wouldn't do a job that I wouldn't have someone else do a job for us that I haven't done myself, or will do myself. So, um, you know, I've been known to move porta johns early in the morning because they're in the wrong spot, or at the end of the event, I'm taking the trash out just like everybody else is. So, we all wear those many hats, and work hard to have the great outcome.
Well, and so two-part question, although related. I'm curious about the biggest lessons you've learned in business ownership along the way, and then also sort of advice that you would provide for someone who is considering down this path or is a new entrepreneur. They could be one and the same, or they could be different.
Yeah, good. That's a really good question. You know, I'll go back to sort of something you just mentioned, passion, right? Um, I think if you're going to own a business, you got to be passionate about it. And I've read some books about business ownership and how to do it better. And you know, I, it all starts with passion. You want to start a bakery, you got to love baking, right? You got to it's got to be a passion of yours. So that old adage, you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. You got to
Yeah.
love what you're going into business for. And as we talked about, I love our sport of running. I love seeing people succeed, and getting to that finish line. There's no better endorphin in the world than crossing that finish line. I swear, it's way better than anything else that you'll ever get. So first of all, follow that passion, and make sure that you're getting into it because of that. The second thing is I think find people that can help you. I didn't have all the answers to this, and I still don't. First and foremost, I had great people that I would ask to go to lunch and talk about the struggles, or what I needed to figure out, in terms of almost like, not necessarily a board of directors, but uh, advisors that you can count on, friends that you could ask questions for and figure things out with and bounce ideas off of. That was a big part of. So finding resources like that, and finding those people that can be part of, that share your passion and can be part of it. And I think as you said, surrounding yourself with people that are amazing is a huge component of it. Those are two sort of pieces of advice: is passion, and finding amazing people to share it with. I think that's huge. um in terms of mistakes, I don't know. I might have to get back to you on that one with a little bit more thought. um you know I think if I go back in time on stuff, I think as a small business owner, I think you want everything now. You want to be
Hmm.
better now, even as a runner, right? Um, you want to have the results happen instantly. You go training, you want to run a faster 5K, you want to get to the finish line, you want to not walk the entire 5K if you're just beginning. Um, I think the mistake that I've made in different aspects of it is not being patient enough. Sometimes it takes time. It takes time. Sometimes you have to take a couple steps backwards to go forward in some respects. And I'll take the analogy back to training. If you're training for a marathon, you got to do months and months of training. You can't run a marathon on day two of training. It takes 16 weeks of a training program. So it's days and weeks and months of work that goes into it. But you do your first long run, you might feel worse the next day, um, but it's additive to get better in the long term. And I think sometimes people want the results too quick, and I wanted results too quick on certain things within the business world, pushing it when I should be a little bit more patient with things, or patient with people even, right? You want to have that result right away. Well, it's going to take time to get that result, and being a little bit more patient on things is probably um, balancing um, your desire to be competitive and fast and good and bigger and better with patience. So
Well, it's tricky when you're excited and when you love it and you just, like it can be hard to sort of
Yeah.
just enjoy the moment you're in. I want to pull on what you just said. So I just ran my first half marathon in February and I'm
Nice.
anticipating my first full in January. So training, top tips for
Yeah,
preparing. I mean,
sure.
clearly taking the time and making sure that, I don't
Yeah.
push it too fast.
Well, in training for a marathon, I know there's so many people that have said, "Hey, I'm going to run a marathon." And for some people, it's a bucket list, right? Like I'm going to do this. I'm going to run a marathon before X age. I'm going to do this, and I love that, right? I love that um, that people want to enjoy this sport and get something out of it, and have a life, a big life moment, running Boston, running New York, running Chicago, running Manchester City, whatever those bucket list things are. And I think similar to what I just said, it's about being patient. It's about being consistent. Um, I've given many speeches around, and one of them with high school kids is about being, motivated. There's a couple attributes that I want you to have, right? Motivated. So motivated means you got to get out there. Like you got to want to do it. If it's like if getting out there is like pulling teeth, then this is not the right sport for you. You got to want to do it. There's got to be some drive, some motivation behind that. And then secondarily, that motivation has to be consistent, right? It can't just be, hey, I'm motivated today, but not tomorrow. And I was motivated. Everybody has these, like when New Year's happens, right? And you have like the commitment for the new year, and that lasts, like that New Year's resolution for fitness, the commit to get fit lasts a week. It's like, well, okay, well that wasn't quite long enough. The it's they say it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Mhm.
So it can't be, this motivation has to be consistent over the course of many weeks and months. So that, and then the last part is patient, like we just talked about. So from the tips and tricks of training, I think those philosophies have to be there for 16, 20 weeks. But I'm glad to hear that your first marathon's not next month. So you have time. You have time to do the
Yes.
training.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. All right. So,
Yeah.
last thing I want to ask you about, you had shared offline that you ran a marathon in Antarctica. What was that
I
like?
I did. I did. I've run some great marathons, great venues. Obviously running Boston, New York City. I've Honolulu. Some great marathons out there. All of them have a amazing crowd support, and great downtown finishes, and you know tens of thousands of people at the starting line. The hoopla. They're live on TV. They're amazing. I wouldn't give any of those up for the world, but you know, being able to run a marathon in Antarctica, which is someplace people don't typically go anyway,
Right.
with only 55 other people, um, was with no spectators. there's, there's not even birds in the sky. There's no penguins on the you don't see that, running on a glacier, just by the South Pole is one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. I was so fortunate to be asked to go and do that and provided that opportunity. Um, it was an amazing opportunity, and something that I'll remember the rest. It was pretty cold, but and very windy, but an amazing opportunity to run a marathon on that continent.
Well, and hence no spectators. That's probably a sport in and of itself to try and stay warm.
Well, and it's there's a whole bunch of, obviously, like anything, there's a whole bunch of literature out there. There's The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner is a book, harrowing someone that runs a lot, right? And running can be lonely. Not all the time. It's you yourself and the road sometimes, or the trail. Um, when you're out there running a marathon in Antarctica, um, it's you yourself and the ice and the wind in the middle of it, and you're thinking about a lot. Your mind can go a lot of places, as you said, yoga, right? You have to be in the right mindset. um you When you're out there running, and it's the wind's hitting you, and the ice is, or the snow's blowing across your feet, it's you think a lot about life and how lucky you are, and finding that finish line and getting to that finish line was probably as sweet as any finish line I've ever had.
All right. So, if there's anything else I didn't ask you about, or maybe you'll share where people can find you online on social media.
Sure, Kate. Of course. Yeah. I mean, well, you can find me just about every day at the office or at a road race in person. But our Millennium store and offices are located in Bedford, right on 101, Bedford, New Hampshire. Of course, for anybody that's out of the New England area, come visit the great state of New Hampshire and New England. If you happen to come to the state's largest city, we're just a couple miles from downtown, and the best running store you'll find in New Hampshire. So come over and visit us. But of course, digitally we're online, Facebook at Millennium Running on Facebook, and Millennium Running on Instagram, and at Millennium Running on Twitter. So those are the three bigs. I think we have a TikTok. I haven't quite figured out how to use that as well, but we'll get there on all these social channels. But certainly something we can follow people digitally and track them. And hey, you might find us at some event and come and run with us.
Well, excellent. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
My pleasure. Thank you. Keep on doing the great work with people, places, and purpose, Kate.
Thanks, John. One of the things my conversation with John reminded me of is how much I love the words, phrases, and commands, if you will, that my black lab Timber has learned from me over his 9 years that I wasn't intending to teach him. John mentioned studying architecture in college, but how in hindsight there was so much value, not necessarily in learning about architecture, but in the creative thinking skills he was taught through that course of study that at the time he didn't necessarily realize would be as valuable to him as they are now. We all have skills and attributes that we bring to the table that may take intentional thought to recognize and tease out. On to the takeaways from today's episode. Priorities can shift. What's important to you now may be less important than something else someday, and it's okay to make changes to honor those shifting priorities. There's priceless value in how an experience feels to your clients or your audience. How do you or your business make other people feel? Surround yourself with good people who put their heart and soul into their work. As John said, that we is way better than a me could ever be. You have to love what you do, but you also have to have the motivation and the drive to want to do it consistently over time. And recognize the additive significance of what you're doing each day. Be patient. Good things take time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of People, Place, and Purpose. Please remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave a comment. As a new podcast, your support really means a lot. And if you know someone who might be inspired by this story, please share it with them. I would also love to engage with you directly, so please find us on Instagram at People, Place, Purpose. I'm so excited for us to continue to learn and grow and discover new things together, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, it's a beautiful day for an adventure. Get out there and explore.